Great. Well, good evening. I'd like to call to order the June 27th, 2022 Lake Washington School Board meeting. Let the record reflect that all board members are present except for Director Choi, who is excused. So the board values public participation and engagement in the meetings of the board, and board meetings will continue to be live streamed on the Lake Washington School District website, as well as they are archived there if you would like to see it at a later time. And you are always welcome to email any individual board member at boardmembers@lwsd.org. So our first item on the agenda this evening is to approve the agenda. I will now entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director LaLiberty to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, so our first item tonight is public comment. And so the Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District welcomes the public to the business meeting of the board and encourages community engagement. The board will dedicate 30 minutes of our meetings to hear from the public during a public comment period. With the return to in-person meetings, we have updated the process to sign up for public comments. Please go to our website to sign up to participate in public comments by noon of the day of the board meeting. Comments will be offered in the order of sign up, beginning with speakers in person, followed by virtual, and concluding with written comments as time allows. And if I could just remind anybody who is doing public comment, we do ask you to keep it to 3 minutes as much as possible. That'd be greatly appreciated. And with that, I'd like to call our first two individuals we have here up to the microphone. That'd be Susan and Sarah Carollo. And welcome. Thank you so much for coming this evening.
Hi, I'm Susan Carollo, and I'm here to talk about our district's Inclusive Practices Project. This year, I had 2 Eastlake graduates, 1 junior at Eastlake, and a 5th grader at McAuliffe. I was here 4 years ago speaking about our need to include kids with disabilities in general education classes, and I thought I'd give a personal update and highlight our continued need for inclusive practices to come to our schools in Sammamish. After doing kindergarten through 3rd grade at a Catholic school in Issaquah, the pandemic hit, and we transitioned back to McAuliffe Elementary in Sammamish. This year was my daughter's 1 fully included in-person year of elementary school in Lake Washington. She was successful at beating everyone at tic-tac-toe and checkers, learning to multiply fractions, and she loved the economics simulation that all Gen Ed 5th graders do at our school. I could tell she felt cared for and got along well with all the adults in the building. Academics were very well supported, and learning to handle routine assignments, transitions, and specialists independently were all successful. She describes 5th grade as great. All this success from an elementary school that went from 0 to inclusion 1.0, where you put a paraeducator with a student in general education but don't change anything else. We need inclusive practices everywhere, not just in Kirkland. One inclusive practice that was missing this year was peer support. As a result, all social goals were not met, and the principal responded harshly when I pointed out this opportunity. This is the first reason we need the Inclusive Practices Project to come to Sammamish. There are school leaders who need to hear these ideas from someone more official and not just a parent. A second big reason we need inclusive practices in Sammamish is our local middle school. At the Welcome to Englewood meeting, the special education team described how they're going to sort our kids into many separate classes. Nothing was said about how to support kids in general education. In fact, they even went so far as to say that they didn't like obvious support in Gen Ed because it's such a self-conscious age. Now that may be, but adults need to lead the way in normalizing support. Imagine all the mental health crises we could avoid if students saw that support was given in a respectful way when needed. The third major reason we need inclusive practices, such as universal design, collaboration time, schedules that support intervention and enrichment blocks, and peer support, is COVID. Students returned to in-person school with a greater variety of knowledge and experiences than ever. Some had learning pods and private tutors, and some barely logged in at all. Universal design for learning and other inclusive practices would deal with COVID variability and raise achievement for everyone. I'm asking that we promote all these practices in every school in the district this summer. and give administrators and staff a vision for the way all students can achieve, and give teachers the knowledge and the tools that they need. Thank you. Sarah has some comments about fifth grade as well.
Hi, my name is Sarah Carollo, and I just finished fifth grade in Mrs. Wellington's class. Fifth grade was great. First, I like to buy candy at the class store. We had a class store once a month, and it could spend the Starbucks we got from turning in homework and doing our class job. Second, I liked playing tic-tac-toe and checkers with people during recess. Finally, I met Miss Natalie, who helped me learn some info about turning mixed numbers into improper fractions and dividing decimals. She helped me learn a lot during math time. I am happy I was in fifth grade at McAuliffe. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming tonight and providing that and your experiences. Greatly appreciated. I know, see, we're all just smiling because it was just so wonderful to hear from our students and our parents. And she's right, there's more work to be done, and it's good to hear of the work that does work and where we can go from there. So appreciate greatly that opportunity to hear. So our next item on the agenda is approval of the June 27th, 2022 consent agenda. I will now entertain a motion. Oh, I am so sorry. Public comments have not finished. We actually have 2 more public comments. So Director Carlson is going to read one of the written comments, and I will summarize the other one.
Great. We're still grappling with multiple formats for input, so apologies. All right, so this is from Heidi Wong, a parent at Kirkland Middle School. It was brought to my attention that Lake Washington School District has decided to change how to allocate counselors, and Kim's no longer qualifies for 2 full-time counselors and will be reduced to 1 full-time and 1 part-time counselor next year. This seems like a step in the wrong direction. From what I can tell, the students needed more and not less counseling support. I do not see this trend decreasing. Personally, my 6th grader has benefited tremendously from the school counselor this past year. Due to myriad challenges this past couple of years, my daughter's mental health and well-being was significantly impacted. She's often cried herself to sleep and reluctantly got up the next day to attend school. One of the saving graces was easy access to school counselor, who met with her regularly and offered ideas and recommendations on how to cope with everything. I truly believe that if that was not available, my daughter would not have survived 6th grade, and I can't imagine her being the only one. Please reconsider the school counselor distribution and at least maintain current levels. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we did have one other written comment that came in from Alisa Singh. She's a parent, guardian, family member within Lake Washington School District, and she sent a longer email in regards to the grading policies that were in place. She has commented before, so this is just in regards to the grading practices at our high schools, and she highlights some very key things. All of us have received that and will read it. I'd also just like to highlight within that we are in the fall, the next school year, we'll have a work group that is working around the grading policy around consistency and practices across the board, so that is something that is coming, and so appreciate the information and resources being sent, and all of that will be taken into consideration. So that is it for our public comment this evening. And so the next item on the agenda is the approval of the June 27th, 2022 consent agenda, and I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director LaLiberty. Dr. Holman, will you please poll the board?
Director LaLiberty,
Yes.
Director Stewart,
Yes.
Director Carlson,
Yes.
and President Bleasner.
Yes. And with that, the motion carries. And Dr. Holman, we did accept some donations this evening. Could you please
Yes.
summarize those for us?
Absolutely. So tonight, we're in acceptance of over $102,000 in donations, just over $50,000 from our PTSA and about $50,000 from private sources. And as we enter into the summer, we know that the preparations for next school year, programs and services, those are the types of things that our schools are planning for, and these resources allow our schools to make those plans and preparations, knowing that contracts need to be signed for extracurriculars or field trips and all of those types of things. And so it's with great appreciation that we accept these donations.
Thank you very much. So we will now move on to our non-consent agenda, and our first item on that agenda is the first reading of our 2022-23 budget. So Dr. Holman.
Yes, and so I'm going to welcome Associate Superintendent Barbara Posthumus and Director of Business Services, Chris Brennigan, up to the podium to participate and share with us the first reading of the 22-23 budget. As the board knows, the development of a budget is a long-term project. It starts early in the calendar year and concludes and wraps up with the board having a budget in August to be able to take action on. And so with that, the three of us have a shared presentation for you this evening. Associate Superintendent Barbara Posthumus will lead us off.
Good evening. I am pleased tonight to present our draft budget, our proposed budget for the next school year. The 2022-23 school year represents the second year of the biennial budget for the legislature. The budget provides, tonight I'm going to go over the budget policies, process, and timeline. We'll do an overview of all funds. We'll talk about revenues and expenditures, strategic work, and alignment. The legislature for fall, this mic is really loud. The legislature for fall provided, the biggest changes you'll see in the budget are the impacts from legislative changes such as the COLA, state legislative COLA of 5.5%. They also implemented a 6% increase to the employer cost of SEB, which is the healthcare benefits, and the minor increases to retirement contributions. The legislature is also making incremental steps to increase the prototypical allocation model over the next 3 years for physical and social emotional support staff, which will bring the gap, bridge the gap between what the state funds and what the district already spends. The budget also, you'll see, reflects an enrollment decline of 1.5% or about 450 students. You have in your board packet the couple of budget documents. You have what is called the F-195. This is the official state format budget. It's a consistent format that all districts across the state put their budget in this format, and that is the version you are actually adopting in August. And then there's a budget summary document. We don't have the complete narrative, detailed budget summary document yet available, but in your board packet is the detailed budget information for fund, which contains all the financial pages. We anticipate what we call the user-friendly version will be available by the end of this week. So we will have the documents. They're available now in board docs. They're also will be available on our website and via request. If anybody wants them hard copy, then they can request them through the budget office. So I'm just going to review our policies and timelines. And again, we have spent, I think, 3 study sessions recently going over the preliminary budget information, and so this will be a review tonight. So just a reminder, the policy 6000 requires that the annual budget is evidence of the board's commitments towards fulfilling the objectives of the instructional program. Policies related to the development that drive our work. It provides for staff participation, sharing recommendations with the board, and sharing with citizens prior to formal action. As a district, we solicit input from departments and program managers, and we solicit requests for budget adds from staff. We take that to an advisory leadership team for review and feedback, and then recommendations of the superintendent are shared with the board in an earlier study session. So this next policy, OE5, our financial planning, outlines, did I go up one? This, continuing on policy 6000, that is describes that we will hold our annual budget hearing. And then again, that will happen in August. Our deadline is August 31st. OE5 just provides the manner how the budget is to be developed. It needs to be in a summary format, understandable, describes revenues and expenditures, discloses assumptions, etc. I won't read all of these, but again, provides necessary information on significant matters, discusses anticipated changes, and is based on reasonable consultation. So our timeline is tonight, we're presenting you with the draft budget. It will be available again on our website. That begins the public comment period, which ends August 7th, and then we will have a public hearing at the August 8th board meeting, and then we will take formal board action at the August 22nd board meeting. We must approve a budget no later than August 31st for the next school year. So I'll jump into just the overview of the budget, and we'll just talk about each of the funds. We have 5 funds. School districts have 5 funds that they budget for each year, and the main one is the general fund, which is our day-to-day operations, and then which is a $547 million of expenditures, associated student body fund, $7 million, debt service of $81.7 million, capital projects of $90.6, and transportation of $1.6. We'll do an overview of each fund in the next few slides. So I'm going to start with our ASB fund of $7 million. The budget provides authority for $7 million. Each school in our district, we have over 54 schools, prepares an individual budget plan for the year, working with the associated student body. It provides for extracurricular activities, and the revenues include fundraisers, sales, and sports. Our debt service fund of $81.7 million, the budgeted expenditures are for the redemption of principal and interest payments for our bonds, and it includes principal and interest for our previously sold bonds, and including the limited general obligation bonds that we sold in May of 2020. The revenue that we receive is we levy each year to repay the bonds and reflects the estimated interest and those levies. And we can only levy what we need to pay the principal and interest. The budget does include $4 million in contingency, just so we don't exceed our budget authority. Our capital projects fund is $90.6 million that we're continuing to spend our remaining 2018 capital technology and facility levy, and then we'll begin spending our 2022 capital technology and facility levy that the voters approved in February. We also are continuing to finish our 2019 construction levy projects and are beginning planning for our 2022 construction levy projects. The revenues in this fund include our levies for both the tech levy, the construction levy, investment earnings, our impact fees from our jurisdictions, and then this year we are receiving a King County aquatic grant to help do improvements on our Juanita High School pool. We're very excited about that. The budget also includes transfers that we're required to do. The state requires us the technology training that we receive from the capital levy is required to be spent in the general fund, and then we transfer those funds from the levy to the general fund. We also are required to transfer from capital projects to the debt service fund to pay for the principal and interest on those LGO bonds. So for 2023, our major capital projects that the $90 million budget will fund is completion of our core expansions. That's gym space and cafeteria space at Franklin, Rose Hill, and Twain, opening in this fall. And then classroom addition at Carson, which will also open this fall. And our core expansion at Carson is being planned and beginning now, but will open fall in '23. And that will complete our 2019 levy projects. And then our 2022 facilities and technology capital levy, we have ongoing building systems and improvements. This pays for flooring, roofing replacements, school and program improvements, stadium and field upgrades. We have parking lot improvements. So all of those are funded out of those levies. Our technology portion of the levy provides network upgrades, refresh of student and staff computers, classroom displays, wireless work, and just anything related to the classroom footprint. So, and just our business and tech systems as well. We also transfer, as I mentioned, funds out from the tech levy to the general fund as required. So our transportation vehicle fund has an expenditure authority of $1.6 million. We have a budget that will allow us to replace 10 buses, and we use primarily our state depreciation funds for bus replacement and then our investment earnings from the transportation levy that we ran over 20 years ago. So we are fortunate that we've been able to really maintain our bus fleet with the depreciation funds and our levy funds. Something we wanted to share with you, some exciting news. The transportation and purchasing departments worked with our bus vendors, and they were able to place the vehicle order for these 10 buses plus the 23-24 anticipated bus order, so a total of 20 buses. And by placing the order now, we were able to save 20% or over $500,000 on the cost of buses, because all of the bus vendors are increasing their costs 20 to 25%. And so we were able to get our orders in early. And the good news is the 23-24 buses, they aren't going to be delivered until the 23-24 school year, and they will be paid for. So there's no impact to our current budget or cash flow, but we were able to secure our pricing today. So that helped save a significant amount of dollars. So we're pleased that our purchasing and transportation departments were able to work that out with those vendors. So I'm going to have John go over this part, the strategic work and resource alignment.
And as the board knows, we do significant amount of work to engage our stakeholders and really to identify those key areas that need additional dollars spent to accomplish our goals. And this is a very unique year in that we are just really returning from the pandemic, and so there's some unique expenditures as we move forward this year. And so here the images in front, there's a few pieces here that are relevant to our work. First, in the middle is our strategic plan. Our work really is to align our additional resource expenditures with our strategic efforts, because we believe that by accomplishing our goals within the strategic plan, we're actually moving towards the results that the board has set for the district. The two images on the outside, one, the Meritorious Budget Award, and then the user-friendly budget draft on the right-hand side, really both of those are really just the commitment to transparent communication around a very complex topic, which is our budget. And so that's what those represent as we move through our budget processes. And as we made decisions around the recommendations we would bring to the board for the 22-23 budget, there's some kind of key pillars that we use as we're making those evaluations. First is our district mission and vision, our mission of graduating students and our vision of preparing students to be future ready. Those really are the drivers of the decision making. Our board's results policies as we continue to work on our strategic goals, our strategic focus, it really is all in service of accomplishing results 1, 2, and 3 that the board has set forth. We've identified 3 specific areas within our strategic plan that we believe provide the highest leverage to accomplishing our goals, and that's our multi-tiered systems of support, our inclusive practices, and our equity commitments, because those really do encompass so much of the student experience and lead to additional outcomes for our students. And then we also know, as we're looking at our budget, the evaluation of our overall organization, knowing that there are just some baseline needs of the district. We are an employer of 4,500 people. That means with that comes systems, business systems that need to be paid attention to. We have all of the array of services that are required to pay employees, ensure employee benefits and salary are adequately provisioned. Like, all of those things also need to be considered as we're thinking about budget. As we were working through this, there were some key data, and we shared these with the board, and so if those watching are interested in the data that we shared with the board, the first study session in June is available for review, and it kind of points to some of those data points that we were looking at as we were making decisions around additional resources. First, we heard loud and clear from both staff, administrators, that behavior and supervision was a high priority as we go into the 22-23 school year. Support for substitutes, knowing that when we don't have an appropriate substitute in a classroom, in other positions, that creates significant difficulty for a school to operate and function. Classified staffing supports at a number of different places, preschool through high school, ensuring that school and district operational supports are maintained and paid attention to, and then the mental health and special service needs of our students were a priority for our staff and administrators. And so this next slide kind of takes all of the information and data that we shared with the board and puts it in a single slide. Again, if people want more information around each of these, that study session presentation does go into much greater depth and detail. What you would find in that presentation, in that first row up above, the student strategic supports, that really is the drivers around MTSS, inclusive practices, and equity, focused on additional elementary IA support, a program we're calling Floating Teachers, that is full-time substitute teachers that are placed each day into positions that weren't able to be filled by our typical sub-processes, increasing behavioral health supports, providing deans at the middle school level to provide proactive and sustainable supports for our students, ensuring that we're addressing appropriate levels of paraeducator staffing, some additional time for preschool teachers, and that's specifically aligned with our inclusionary practices initiative, knowing that our preschool teachers are classified staff and making sure that they had the right number of days so that they could really collaborate with the certificated special education teacher that they're co-teaching with. Ensuring we provided some resource for special education curriculum resources, and then our overall behavioral and mental health supports for our students. And those were our strategic ads, really aligned with our strategic goal areas. The other ads really are in that organizational category, ensuring that our high school athletic directors had the right number of days for the appropriate supervision of students, providing IA support for our dual language program. As you know, during the pandemic and really over the years, the need to increase our nursing staffing. So here, I believe this is 5 FTE. Our vision mobility staffing really is based on the needs of students. And so our special services team reported the number of students that would need this service. And so just aligning that staffing with that student need. In that next category of school operations, you'll see custodial rovers. Again, that's really filling a classified substitute gap, knowing that we have predominantly all of our custodial positions filled, but we have on average about 10 to 15 of those positions that go unfilled without an appropriate substitute in it per night or per day. And so making sure that we have staff to be able to cover those as they're needed. We know that COVID is still in our community. We know the current requirements as we're responding to COVID. And so these COVID case managers are in preparation for the start of the school year because there still are requirements for reporting to public health, making sure that we're tracking all of those data. If those requirements go away, these health services professionals, we definitely have additional things that they can help support, knowing that there's general and typical youth vaccination programs that need to make sure that we're tending to, and all the myriad of health services needs. And then that last row of district operational support, some of those things that I was referring to early on, adding some level of accountant staffing as we continue to grow as a district, and making sure that the right number of hours for the individual that supports our asset management program. And so you can see there, the majority of these ads really are in the one-time category, with some of it being in the ongoing category. That really is in relation to kind of this, the intensity of need right now around some of the student behavioral and supports, and also as we look forward with our overall budget, knowing that we don't have the luxury of adding $6.5 million to our budget today in ongoing dollars. And so these will be ongoing evaluations for us over the years.
All right, I'm going to turn this over to Chris Brannigan, our Director of Business Services, and he'll cover the main part of the budget of the general fund.
You're going to change the slides. Did you say enter?
Just use the arrow or the mouse.
Okay. So I get to go over some of the factors that went into building the nearly $550 million general fund budget. So enrollment is a key driver of both the revenues and the expenditures. As you can see from the chart, that COVID interrupted our rapid enrollment growth a few years ago, but enrollment is still expected to decline next fall. Actual enrollment decline for the last 2 years was 1.7%. Additional decline is projected next year of 2.3%. That's the actual decline. Budget to budget is a 1.5% decrease. Lake Washington had one of the lowest enrollment declines compared to other districts in King and Pierce counties. We're closely monitoring the demographic data and expect this to be temporary given the continued business and enrollment growth in our region, or employment growth, sorry. So the prior chart reflected headcount and compared actual data to proposed budget. This is 447 average annual FTE basic enrollment and online education enrollment that we're projecting a decrease from the 21-22 budget to the 22-23 budget. And that reflects a 1.5% decrease from year to year. As shared during the study session, our average annual student FTE we're funded based on annual average FTE, not based on head count. We're conservative when we do our budgets for enrollment because we don't want to overcommit our revenues and our expenditures. Should we have more students that come in the fall, we have budget contingency built in of 500 students that will allow us to staff those appropriately should they show up. So some of the key changes in our revenues are on this next slide. The overall budgeted revenue increase is $43.1 million. This may sound like a lot, but the majority of the increased budget is committed to required expenditures and or provides additional contingency that is offset by the same amount in the expenditure budget. The local impact increase of $5.7 million in revenue is due to enrollment. Revenue increase due to the EPO and levy renewal, and also includes enrollment changes in categorical programs such as multilingual and ALE. The state funding changes, the increase of $23.3 million, the main driver of this is the increase to the 5.5% state COLA, our MSOCs, and the health benefits and pensions, and the prototypical staffing changes. The federal grant impact decrease of $4.1 million is due to ESSER 3 funds going away next year. Our spending this year exceeded the original ESSER fund plan, and so we spent the full grant amount this year in 21-22. We originally planned to spend half of the total ESSER grant in 21-22 and the other half in 22-23. On transportation, $2 million is due to, it's based on the 21-22 expenditures, so the way the state funds transportation is based on prior year expenditures with some other factors in there, but we're anticipating that that will be available. Due to the pandemic, school districts were held harmless for this year based on 19-20 funding. Under other self-supporting, there's an increase of $16.2 million reflected there. The majority of that is due to the federal and local grant contingency that we built in, going from $10 million to $20 million. That's offset again on the expenditure side. Sorry. It also has the increase for the safety net grant based on projected revenue. And as you recall, we did a budget extension earlier this year as a result of not having enough budget capacity, so we're trying to avoid that by building in these contingencies. Also included are extended day childcare, nutrition services, accelerated program testing fees, and capital transfers and the other self-support. This is a different view of the revenues. This is what you'll see in some of the budget documents that we've prepared for you. This is a comparison of the state-defined revenue categories from prior year budget to the proposed budget. Overall revenue increase represents 9% from the prior year. Majority of this is due to the COLA and benefit pension changes. It also reflects the increase for contingency and the increase for safety net. The expenditure budget also includes all of these changes, but it also includes the increase for fixed costs, required organizational needs, and the strategic work. The state apportionment is primarily the legislative impacts for COLA benefits and staffing, the changes to the staffing model. The state categorical line on there is primarily the increase of the safety net and transportation for the 12.8%. The federal change of 17% is primarily the removal of the ESSER 3 funding for next year, and also the fact that the school meals are no longer 100% federally funded. The change of 16.4% to the levy reflects the EP&O levy that the voters approved last February. The fee programs increase of 99%. That it really just reflects the primary increase is the $10 million that we built in for contingency, which is again offset in the expenditures, and then also the return of charging for meal fees in 22-23. And other, the 7% is the increase due to transfers from capital projects to pay for tech levy and professional development.
I think Director Liberty has a question, if you wouldn't mind. I'm sorry.
You saw me muttering to
I
myself.
did.
I just didn't follow the fee program increase. Why? I mean, you see a 99% increase in something that kind of jumps out to you on the screen. Why such a large percentage increase? And $12 million. I mean, a large dollar increase for.
10 million of that 12 million is for the contingency that we're building, going from 10 million to 20 million.
The contingency For what?
For grants and other local
Okay,
costs.
but why is it in the fee program line item if it's a contingency for some grants?
It's not necessarily a federal grant, but kind of a local, like some of the local, sorry. Sure.
Out of the $20 million that we provide in contingency for grants and donations, half of it is what we call local, so we consider it local donations, and half we budget in federal. So we increased, so 5 million of that increase is in our donations, which is in the local piece. It went from 5 million to 10 million, and the other half of that is in the federal program. So the difference of 12 million in the fees, there's, again, Chris mentioned it's the gifts and donations. It's 7 million of that is nutrition services. So that 7 million was in federal. Last year, it's been there for 2 years because of the federal government paying for the meals. So having that 7 million back in what we call fee programs is what it was 2 years pre-pandemic. So that's the major change, is the 7 million in school meal fees, 5 million in gifts and donations, and then just a small amount in other items. Does that help?
Okay, yeah, no, thank you. I think I'm
Sorry.
sort of getting there. The fees for school lunch make sense
Yeah,
to me.
it's
'cause
really
I can
7
see the
plus
reduction.
5. Yep.
And that would, but I'm still scratching my head as to why we include donations as fee, in the fee program line item.
Donation, it's local, the actual state-defined coding is called local non-tax. So you have your fees in there,
I
you
see.
have donations, you have,
So just the title, I'm sorry,
yeah, the title is fee programs, but it includes.
it encompasses more than that.
Anything that is a grant or a gift or fines, fees, rentals, leases, all of those types of revenues are included in there.
Okay.
And
At
so,
all-
Anything that isn't state, federal, or governmental gets put in fee programs, and we can certainly update that title to, local fee is easier to say than local non-tax.
It certainly is, and you only have so much room to fit a title in there, so I understand. Okay, thank you.
All right.
I don't think he's wrong. I read fee programs as, oh my God, we're going to raise $12 million off of participation in sports.
That's,
Yeah,
So
all right. We
it-
certainly can.
another title would be
Okay.
an improvement. Thank
We
you.
certainly will
Even if it's
update
vague.
that.
Thank you.
The fact that you didn't have any
Call it other-
sports participation during pandemic,
Yeah.
I can see it going up too.
Local non-tax would work perfect.
Perfect.
thank you both. Sorry for derailing that. I just was scratching my head.
All right, thank you. And now you can continue going on.
Okay. So some of the key changes on the expenditure sides we're showing, so just real quickly, previously we were showing revenue decreases as a red down arrow and revenue increases as a green up arrow on the expenditure side. Because expenditures are going down, it's a down green arrow and a red up arrow for increased expenditures. Overall expenditures, this represents a 9% increase over the prior year, a total of $45.8 million. This reflects a decrease of $2.4 million in staffing due to enrollment. This is for basic ed and special ed, the decrease that you saw earlier. It also reflects $27.4 million in compensation, benefits, and pension. On the state categorical grant self-supporting programs, there's an increase of $13.8 million. This includes some of the contingency, the ESSER 3 change, the special ed safety net, the multilingual ALE online change, lap stabilization, capital transfers, running start, and Title II. The fixed costs represents the $1.9 million for the insurance increases, utilities, transportation costs, fuel costs, and election costs. Then we're subtracting $1.4 million for the one-time expenditures from the previous year that we were in the 21-22 budget as planned that aren't continuing. And then the strategic and organizational work that John went over for the $6.5 million. This is a required legislative slide to share with you. It's the materials, supplies, and operating costs. It shows that we're getting $41 million in state-funded MSOCs, that we're budgeting expenditures of $29.6 million, and that the difference of $11.4 million is being used for special education, substitute costs, professional learning, compensation for curriculum work, and meetings and trainings. All of these items have an obvious educational benefit and impact to student achievement. And this is a budget view of our expenditures by program. Overall increase is primarily due to the state funding changes for COLA, benefits, and the added contingencies. Also included are changes to enrollment, categorical grants, and budget for the organizational and strategic needs. Some of the larger variances by program include the alternative learning experience, 96.4%. That reflects the Sammamish River Valley Online School that was not budgeted in ALE last year, but it is being budgeted under that program in 22-23. The federal stimulus ESSER 3 funds a decrease of 93.7%. Majority of the ESSER 3 budget isn't there for next year. The small amount that's in there, the $256,000, represents the LAP stabilization funds that we're getting from federal dollars. On special education, that includes the safety net grant. On CTE, even though our enrollment is decreasing in basic ed, we're seeing an increase in the CTE enrollment, and that just requires us to shift our expenditures from basic ed to CTE. And then under other instruction, the 74.6%, that includes the increase for contingency, which is offset in the increase in revenues. So you can see, I think this is a total of $547.2 million. So state requires us to provide a 4-year outlook. The district has always been very prudent in its budgeting, and we've always looked beyond just the 1-year view, and we've done a long-term enrollment and financial projection. That's helped us make decisions and keep the long-term view in mind. The budget plan was prepared taking into account enrollment changes, planned future costs, and legislative mandates. The budget includes some one-time spending so as not to commit future dollars that are not there. So you see that we assumed on the revenue side enrollment minimal growth of 0.5% per year, about 150 kids. Prototypical model change that's being phased in over 3 years through 2024-25. An average of 2% per year for the COLA increase for 2023-24 and beyond. We're not projecting any significant changes in state funding, and the levy amounts are based on the voter approvals. On the expenditure assumptions, certificated classified administrative staffing is aligned with enrollment growth and staffing ratios, and then on our ongoing fixed cost increases are included strategic ads and the reductions that are needed. We're estimating $10 million in 24-25 and $3 million in 25-26 needing to be reduced from the budget. And this is the summary view with the dollar amounts. Let's see. The district's current 4-year plan was prepared to account for enrollment growth and legislative mandates. The plan is also based on current data and reasonable financial projections. We're fortunate to be able to continue to use fund balance to respond to COVID and student needs. Fund balance is decreasing in 21-22 due to the impacts of the pandemic and additional supports that were put in place and will continue to decrease in So you can see that we're projecting a beginning fund balance of $78.6 million, including the reserve for economic impact, revenues of $519.3 million, expenditures of $547.1 million, with a projected ending fund balance of $50.8 million at the end of 2022-23, and a planned use of fund balance of $27.8 million. The district committed $40 million in fund balance at the beginning of 21-22 budget for economic stabilization. The district used these funds to help mitigate the revenue and expenditure impact of COVID, and will continue to use these funds in 22-23. We plan to begin 22-23 with $30 million committed, and the fund balance committed to economic stabilization will be phased out by the end of the 22-23 school year. The budget projection reflects continued use of fund balance and anticipated spending reductions necessary to bring expenditures in alignment with resources by 25-26. And this plan will maintain the district's minimum fund balance requirement of 5% of revenues. So you can see by the reducing $10 million in 24-25, we have a use of fund balance of 3.1, and then we reduced that another $3 million. And the out years beyond 25-26 actually shows the fund balance going up, so that's where we stopped at $3 million. And that's the budget summary. And next steps, again, public comment period, June 28th through August 7th. Next public hearing, August 8th. And then budget adoption, hopefully on August 22nd.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to just ask if any of the board members have any questions. Director La Liberty?
I have a couple questions around the four-year outlook slide. Could you go back to that? It's just, they're all around, there's some slight changes from what we saw at the study session, and I can guess what some of those are. One I noticed is and I think this is probably the buses that you brought up earlier, the expenditures in this year are $400,000 higher than we saw at the study session. Hold on. At the study session, total expenditures that were estimated in the four-year budget were $547 million and $500,000, and this it is 500. Wait a minute here. So it's actually lower. It's lower. So it's. Hold on. I had this backwards.
No,
This is why I wanted to ask the question. Okay, wait, hold on. Never mind. It's actually $400,000.
It's
$400,000 lower
$400,000
each year.
lower. So the revenues are just slightly higher than what we showed in the study session, and the
Yeah.
expenditures are just slightly lower. And that's because as we are still working all hours of the day to get the budget into our, fiscal system and balance. So when we share information with the board, they're close, but they're not exact numbers based on all the inputs that need to happen in order to get the budget into that state format, the F-195 format. So Chris and his team have been working very hard to, get the numbers, and these are the final outcome of the budget changes. So-
So the revenue figures that we're seeing today are for each year are slightly higher than what we saw at the study session.
And some of that's based on the contingency. So when we showed you the study session, it was, we estimated the 500 student contingency, and when we actually plugged in those, the revenue figures, it would just calculated a little bit higher. And so that was the change that occurred from the study session to now.
Okay.
So it's really contingency. We're not anticipating, again, spending those dollars. And we know that in the out years, we're going to monitor what our actual enrollment is this fall, and then we'll continue to update the outlook.
Okay, so the changes are not due to changes in enrollment, it's the contingency piece.
No, the changes are really just fine tuning all the inputs into, 4,500 staff, all of the miscellaneous, as I said, the substitute costs, the per diem. It's going through the budget with a fine tooth comb and making sure we've dotted all the i's, crossed all the t's, and so it's just really, they were just minor adjustments.
Yeah, and now that I just did the math, I recognize that the adjustments are less than 1% of, so,
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah,
Okay, that's helpful. Okay,
but thank you for noticing the change. I appreciate it.
You had me really worried that there was a big change that I hadn't noticed, so.
no,
thank
no,
goodness.
there's not, I was,
Yeah,
I was
no.
curious to know why,
There was a difference.
okay.
Yeah.
And then staying on this, the one big, larger change is our expenditures in the final year of this estimate our estimated expenditures are 2.8 million higher. Do we have a sense of how we're?
I believe we updated, have to go back and look for sure, but I believe we updated the estimate for the local cost of the COLA. So as the state provides additional COLA, for every 1% the state provides us, it costs us about $1 million to $1.5 million. And as those compound on each other, those costs get more expensive each year. So I believe that was the update. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that contributed to that. I
That's
think it
fine
was-
for me.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think, I just want to make sure I heard Chris right. If we were to extend this chart out, the one up on the screen, extend it out, the columns out further, after 25, 26, we would estimate at that point, we would no longer, if things played out,
Yeah,
we would no longer be using the fund balance,
yeah,
right?
the
Did
goal
I
is
get
to
that?
have revenues equal, or expenditures equal to revenue, so that we're maintaining our 5% fund balance.
And in
so that's the
fact,
goal.
by that last year, we're basically neutral at that
Yeah.
point. I mean, that's.
And we know that can flex a little bit
Yeah.
up and down, depending on where our enrollment is, and so we want to update. Again, things can change in a couple of years when it comes to our enrollment, so we want to,
Okay.
that's why we don't go too far beyond the 4-year outlook, because we know it's going to change. It will be different even in the fall, once we know what our actual enrollment is.
Can I ask one last question? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Please,
That's
Director
why we're
Liberty.
here.
Well, I didn't want to monopolize. During this process, as we've gone through the budget process and study sessions, maybe it was just once, maybe it was twice, there was an update to what we budgeted for enrollment.
Yes.
Is there another decision, or another point in which that may happen again in this
Yeah.
budgeting process?
It
Or
will
will
be
it just be
unlikely to increase the budget, so we probably will not change the budget, because it's a lot of extra work to put another 100 students in the budget, but that's why we put the 500 in contingency. So if we do start seeing trends that the enrollment is higher than we projected, that 500 contingency allows us to have both the expenditure capacity and the revenue, should that revenue come in. So the last time I think we shared with the board, we had bumped our kindergarten projections from 1,800 students to 1,900 students. We are tracking to 1,900. The trends are potentially, we may see a little bit more than 1,900. So we're going to keep an eye on that throughout the summer, and we'll let you know where we are. But it's unlikely to cause us to change our budget.
Okay, thank you.
Any other additional questions? I just have one in regards to the online school and that it's now under ALE. And I'm just trying to remember the funding for an ALE student. Is that different than a general education?
It is.
And what
And-
is that?
It is, it's based on the Running Start formula, and it's a little lower than, is that right? It's lower than the basic ed amount.
It's lower than the BEA, but if you were to actually look at how much you're getting for the secondary kids, it's pretty darn close.
So it's not a significant difference?
No.
Okay, that's good to know, because we
And
can,
and we didn't budget we didn't budget the online Sammamish River School as ALE in last year's budget, but this year they are in ALE actually, because we
reported them that way.
reported them
because we
to
had to.
ALE, but we hadn't budgeted them last year that way.
Because of the COVID 2.0 that had
Yeah.
come through that we didn't have to. Okay.
Well, we didn't know, at the time we did the budget, what we were gonna do with online. So we are using ALE this school year, the 21-22 school year, and now our budget reflects that.
And will we continue to be able to use that in the upcoming years as well? Is that where the online
Yes.
school will be under, is under ALE?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you, I was just curious. The other question I had, which maybe perhaps it goes to Dr. Holman, was you had spoke about behavioral health and mental health under the student strategic supports. Just remind me, what were those specific sorts of things? I saw, the behavior dean and things. My other question is around restorative practices and looking at those options of what exactly did that mean in that area?
Yeah, so the specific budget item you're speaking to has two components. First is really a right sizing of our current services budget. And so it seems like with everything right now, costs increase. And so part of this budget is an allocation of $200,000 just to maintain what we're providing for students with our behavioral health and mental health supports. In addition to that, we are also providing full-time mental health counselors for our two larger choice schools, both Tesla STEM High School and ICS. They currently have a half-time service provider, and so this will be able to increase those supports for next year. I think it's also important to note that there's also other ways we're addressing behavioral health and mental health, such as through one of our community partners, YES. They actually received a grant, and they'll be allocating a portion of that grant to our middle schools and increasing support from a half-time counselor to a full-time mental health counselor at each of our middle schools. And so you don't see that in the budget. That's information we'll also share with the board at a study session in August around behavioral health and mental health supports, really our social emotional learning supports for our students in a comprehensive way.
Great, thank you. And Director Stewart?
You just said with the YES grant that they received, that'll mean an increase of a half person or half for emotional support in middle schools. Will that address the question from the public about the issues with KMS?
Oh, I see. The public comment that you received this evening.
Yeah, I was curious.
And so I think that comment is in relation to our typical staffing process. And, the majority of our staffing is conducted on a ratio basis. And so number of students equals number of staff. And from time to time, that also affects our counselor, the academic counseling program at our schools. I believe that's what the Kirkland Middle School was reporting. Does this fill that gap? No, but it's a typical process to staff our schools according to enrollment. And do you recall, is there another school in our district that had the same or had a similar reduction based
Yeah,
on, and I just don't remember
Timberline
off the
Middle
top of my
School
head.
also was reduced to half a counselor based on enrollment.
okay.
And I looked back, a few years, and we have had other schools smaller in the past. Finn Hill and Kamaikan were smaller than they are now, and they had the same counselor staffing, at that because of the enrollment levels.
I guess the concern is that, and I go beyond the one letter, because there's a lot of folks issuing the same concerns, that, okay, we've had a reduction in head count, if you will, so we have a reduction in staffing, but have we had a reduction in the need for intensity of services? So has the need for services gone up, while perhaps the head count has gone down? I think that is what's concerning the parents, to be quite frank.
Yeah, and I think to that point, Director Stewart, the additional YES counseling support would provide benefit in that realm. I asked Associate Superintendent Matt Gillingham to work with his team, provide response to, I know staff reached out to us. He spoke with Director of Student Services, Johnny Fu, about this as well, just to make sure that we're paying attention to these schools that do have a reduction. as we move into the next year.
I just think it's healthy whenever we have a situation like that, we define it better for parents, because I could see that being a confusion factor, and now that you've kind of given give us how it'll be covered, I think there'll be less concern. Perhaps not, but perhaps that.
Any other questions? Well, with that, I want to say thank you very much to staff for all the work you've done in pulling this together. I know this is a lot of work. I appreciate the presentation and giving that and explaining it very well and clearly. And the budget clearly is looking at a whole child concept, at really being able to pull in all those components and the strategic focuses to be able to pull forward. So thank you very much for all your efforts. And just for the public, know that it is available. Please send your comments, questions, concerns. There is somebody who is monitoring that, and we will hold a public hearing on August 8th with formal board action by August 22nd. You can always feel free to email us if you have any questions as well. So with that, wait, Dr. Holman would like to say something else.
Well, I would like to recognize the team led by Chris Brennigan. And as the board knows, we had a longtime budget manager, Lynn Pike, retire this last year. And someone who's been doing it for 30 years has a few tricks up her sleeve. And so really the team had to learn where those tricks were held. And we hired a new budget manager, Kevin Simons, through this process. And just really appreciate all of the extra work that went into this, because what you see here, all of the detail and requirements behind the scenes to be able to accomplish a school district budget is quite substantial. And so it was quite impressive on Friday when I walked through their department. They have a tradition where they celebrate their final budget work with ice cream. And so
It's a new, it's not a tradition, that's a brand new thing.
it is a
There's a
brand new
few
tradition.
birthdays.
And we had a few birthdays as well.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And anyways, just the amount of work that went into this, a few weekends involved with that, really appreciate everything that's gone into that to bring us a really quality budget.
The whole team did a great job and put in a lot of time to put the budget together, so I really appreciate all their work.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And so with that, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is an action on the purpose of real property. It appears Dr. Holman, would you like to introduce?
Just briefly, and then Associate Superintendent Barbara Postumus has some slides to share with the board prior to taking action. As the board knows, the need for space for schools and buildings across our school district is a need, and being able to identify specific properties that strategically allow us to really think and be creative around how we provide space for students, potential opportunities for partnership. These are all things that we work towards. Just last year, the purchase of the Cadman property here in Redmond was really a key piece of our long-term future. The property that is presented to you tonight that you've really considered over the last year is another one of those purchases that really is strategic when we think about the development of student space today, yes, but really into the future. And so Barbara will provide information about this property.
All right, thank you very much. Pleased to present to you this evening the resolution to approve the purchase of property, specifically 2.07 acres adjacent to Kamaikan Middle School, otherwise known as the Ray property. So this is a map of our district, and in the northern kind of central part of where Kamaikan Middle School is the property, and it's located within the city of Kirkland. So just some highlights of the property. It's, again, 2.07 acres. It's 2 parcels and contains 1 home. You can see the red boundary describes the Ray property. Kamaikan is the middle school, the campus on the left, and then Muir Elementary is across the street on the right. It is in, again, the southeast corner of Kamaikan campus. The Facility Advisory Committee, who met from fall of 2019 through January of 2021, recommended that a future funding measure include the rebuild or expansion of Kamaikan Middle School. And so as part of that long-term building excellence plan, the purchase of this property will allow maximum utilization of the Kamaikan Middle School campus. We have also had architects, look at the whole Kamaikan site and provide information about the ability to site multiple buildings on the campus. So it really provides lots of flexibility. The space could also allow the potential for a partnership opportunity as well. The purchase price of this property is $4,097,500. To fund the purchase of the property, we're using the remaining balance from the 2016 bond projects, which is primarily state construction assistance funds. The timeline for this and next steps, we signed the purchase and sale agreement on June 2nd. And then that begins a feasibility period of 60 days, so that's occurring now. So our district brings in consultants to review and inspect the property. We have home inspectors because there is a home on the property. We have engineers, land surveyors, et cetera. And so that's occurring right now. To accommodate the board meeting schedule, we are requesting the board provide a conditional approval tonight to waive the board approval contingency, which is due by August 1st. So the feasibility period, within 60 days, we will determine, yes, this is feasible, and then we would waive that feasibility along with the board contingency, which is due August 1st. And then if the inspection and the board approval contingency is satisfied, then we provide notice to the sellers, and then closing would occur on August 31st. So that's kind of the timeline. Let me just see. This is my last slide, but these are Kamaikan Middle School students during the Hour of Code event. And so again, I just want to thank the Ray family, Barbara and Norman Ray. They own the property for over 64 years. Their daughters, Hillary and Marianne. Sadly, Mr. Ray passed away in February. But we want to thank the family for partnering with the school district and the Kamaikan community and helping us to ensure our students have places to learn. I want to thank our legal counsel, David Johnston, who worked closely with the family to come to agreement. I want to thank Brian Buck, our Executive Director of Facilities, who's leading his team to review and assess the property. And finally, I want to thank the community for their support of schools and bond and levy measures, which makes these purchases possible. So that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions.
Director Liberty.
As far as feasibility for this property, I mean, all we're really looking at is the title report, right? I mean, is there?
No, you're looking.
I mean,
we're
what is
still
the?
going to do our due diligence and take soil samples and
Okay.
and make sure the house is, is in good condition or condition that it could be. Just we want to understand the whole condition of the property to ensure.
Okay, and so the waiver by the board today is how did you phrase it? How did you phrase it earlier? Could you repeat that back to me?
So what you're actually acting on is it's conditional approval to waive board approval contingency by August 1st. So you're giving approval to waive the contingency by August 1st, subject to the terms of the agreement, and then giving us permission to close the transaction. So basically, once we decide that, we do the feasibility, and if we say feasibility, this property is, we believe that it's feasible to purchase, and there's no concerns that would cause us to put a hold on that purchase, then then the board gives us approval to go ahead and waive board approval by August 1st. And so, let's see, I just want to make sure conditional approval tonight to waive board approval contingency, so.
Right.
And then we will, I think I just want to make sure yeah. The board's being asked to provide conditional approval to waive the board approval contingency, which is due by August 1st.
That makes sense
So
to me.
that's what's in the situation, or in the board docs.
Oh, sorry. That makes sense.
If the inspection contingency and the board approval contingency are satisfied, and the district provides notice to the sellers, which is due by August 1st, then, we've already given them earnest money, that would be non-refundable, and then we would close.
Okay.
So what we can do is send an email to the board, just to say the feasibility study, is satisfactory, and we'll be providing our waiver by August 1st.
Okay, you read my mind. That is what
Pardon?
sorry, Director Blazer, that's what I was going to request, is that be in board briefs when that is complete.
Okay.
I think part of it is due to timing of our next board meeting.
Correct, yeah, the whole reason we're here is because we don't have another scheduled board meeting, and so one option was to schedule a special board meeting, on July, 29th, and this was completely, our legal counsel said this is also a way that we could do it, and I believe that's the preferred way, so we don't have to have a special meeting.
And so the request is to just have the email prior about feasibility being taken care of.
Before we prior to the district notifying the seller that we are closing, yes, I would
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. The
Okay.
assumption.
At least
is-
48
yeah,
hours before, if possible.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's totally
And Director
doable.
Stewart?
One of our loyal watchers and viewers has informed me that the last 5 minutes, we haven't had any audio. Yeah, just thought I'd let y'all know. So all those great explanations we just had. Just wanted to be an FYI for you.
I also just wanted to say thank you to everyone that worked on this too. This has been a long process where everyone on all sides has been working very hard to make this happen, and it's thrilling that we're going to be able to acquire this property that makes a lot of sense for what we own already and what we know that we will want to do in the future with that property. So it's pretty neat. I'm really excited.
So with that, if there are no more questions, I will entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2338, providing conditional approval to waive board approval contingency by August 1st, and approve the purchase of the Ray property.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director La Liberty. Any discussion?
I already gave mine.
Hearing no additional discussion, all those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much. And as Director La Liberty said, thank you so much for all the work. I had the pleasure of being in Toronto, where they do a lot of school sightings and different things, and a lot of it is about how do you use the current land you have and use it in partnership. So it's great to see that thinking of how we go forward and really be able to move forward with some exciting stuff. So thank you so much for all your work. And I think now we go on to our next item, correct? So our next item on the agenda is Results 3, Life Skills and Global Citizenship. And this is our second reading for tonight and adoption. So with that, I'm going to pass it to you. I don't know if we have a presentation or not.
So this last Tuesday, June 21st, at our most recent board meeting, Associate Superintendent Matt Gillingham provided a relatively comprehensive review of the process that's been used to rethink Results 3 and the ultimate results of that work in terms of a policy update, superintendent interpretation, indicators, and targets. And so the board has met in study session, I believe it's 3 times since January, to review Results 3. And the outcome is in front of you tonight for a second reading. First reading was done last Tuesday. Tonight is the second reading for the board. And as President Bleasner stated, it's currently titled Life Skills and Citizenship, and one of the key changes is it's Life Skills and Global Citizenship, and that really does encapsulate how we want our students to exit our system, that they're prepared for really the global world that they'll be entering into, whether they're living here in Redmond, Washington, and interacting with a global community here, they're interacting on social media with individuals across the globe. We truly want them to be prepared with the skills to be able to be a whole person, be well, and be able to collaborate and engage with individuals from all walks of life, diverse individuals here in our community and across the globe. And so it's presented tonight for a second reading.
Okay, with that, does anybody have any questions on results 3? So then with that, I will entertain a motion to adopt results 3, life skills and global citizenship as amended, along with the superintendent's reasonable interpretation, indicators, and targets.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director La Liberty to approve the results 3. Is there any discussion? Director Carlson.
I just want to put a big shout out to the team who've been working so hard on this. This has been tremendous effort, and I am much happier with where this is relative to where it began. So it may not be perfect yet, but I am so much happier. So thank you.
Any other discussion? All right. So then with that, I will now, it's already been moved. We'll have a vote. Sorry. It has been moved by Director Carlson, as I stated, and Director La Liberty, that the board approve results 3, life skills and citizenship, as amended. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. So congratulations. This results will be monitored. They actually have done the survey already this spring, if I remember correctly, for a lot of the indicators and information. And this will be monitored in September. We will have an updated study session in regards to total of the whole social, emotional learning, mental health, as Dr. Holman had mentioned prior. So exciting that we're moving forward on this, and thank you so much for all the work. Go ahead, Director La Liberty.
You just mentioned a study session with an update on all of our efforts around social emotional learning. Will that be in conjunction with a review of the results 3 monitoring report? Or are we talking about a separate study session?
My mental model right now would be a separate study session. I'm not sure we would want to try and do both of those in a single study session.
Yeah, ideally, it would give the framework. You get the background in regards to what we're currently doing, then we can look at the results 3.
That sounds wonderful to me.
Okay. Okay, so now the last item on our, on the non-consent agenda this evening is our board summaries from 4 different monitoring reports. Operational Expectation 10, Operational Expectation 11, Operational Expectation 12, and Operation 13. These are actually the end of our Operational Expectation reports, I believe, and these are all the summaries of the discussion that happened at the board. They were included in the board packet, so hopefully you have read them. We can attack these one at a time, or we can do, I see a shaking of the head to just go ahead and do all 4 at the start. So I'm going to go ahead and put forward to entertain a motion in regards to approve all 4 of these summary of monitoring reports
So moved.
Second.
as presented. It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director Liberty to approve them as presented. Any discussion on these board summaries? Director Liberty.
Yes. Teresa, thank you again so much for taking the lead and getting this work done. It's really important for the board to do these board summaries as part of our monitoring process, and we could not do it without you, so thank you. And the other person we could not have done it without for this week is Director Bleasner, who was the board member who took the time to review all of them. So thank you for doing that.
Not a problem. They are very valuable. It does go through and explain sort of where the board was at in regards to compliance on these and in regards to any areas that might have been outstanding and how to do so. If you have any other additional comments, no other further discussion, all right. So with that, I will entertain a vote. because it has been moved by Director Carlson, seconded by Director Liberty, to approve them as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, these will be available on the board docs on our website that you can click through and be able to read to them if you have any other questions. So the next item on our agenda is the superintendent report. Dr. Holman.
Yeah, I just briefly want to provide some comments around grading. I know the board has received quite a bit of communication. Tonight we heard some public comment regarding grading, and President Bleasner indicated that there would be a work group next year, and that is absolutely true, but it's also under what context will this group be working? I know there's a number of teachers and a couple of our schools that have read a book called Grading for Equity, and that's a book that's on my reading list for this summer, because I want to be informed about what that work is that they're thinking about and reading about. We've also engaged with an individual. His name is Tom Guskey. For those of us in the K-12 world, we've known Tom Guskey for years and years around educational best practices. One of his focus right now is around grading, and so even later this summer, our secondary administrators are having a session with Tom Guskey around grading. And he really does highlight best practices, and I was reading an article today by him, and one of the things he concludes his article with, it really is, if you're going to take on grading, then you need to understand the best practices that actually allow students to be successful in your classrooms. And if you don't understand best practices and research around grading, then you may implement strategies and protocols that aren't best practices, but may potentially make logical sense, but they're actually having negative outcomes for students. And so, when I think about grading for equity, I went back to, what do we say about equity on our website? Like, what do we state as our purpose? And so I'm just going to read it, because I think it also kind of highlights, as we think about grading, how do we then pair our commitment to equity with our efforts around grading. So we state that our purpose of equity is to ensure academic success for all students by closing opportunity gaps for students and providing equitable and inclusive working and learning environments for all students, families, staff, and communities. Furthermore, we state that by committing to equity, we will remove the predictability of success and failure that currently correlates with race and other social, cultural factors, will interrupt inequitable practices, examine biases, and create inclusive school environments for all students, and finally, will discover and cultivate the unique gifts, talents, and interests that every human possesses. And that just leads me to believe that our commitment is about ensuring that all of our students are graded in a manner that truly identifies their strengths, identifies their learning outcomes, and thinks about how are they as a learner showing up in a classroom, and how do they demonstrate ongoing growth. Because that really is our commitment to equity. And if we apply that to all of our students in our classroom and school context, then students will be able to demonstrate the highest levels of learning. One of the things that, as I consider programs and services for students in this term grading, I think of the term do no harm. And as we consider changes in practice, if that is also a lens that we're considering is the do no harm, that can also help us understand whether or not the practices we're considering are beneficial or not to all of the students sitting in our classroom. And so I'm excited about this work. I'm excited to provide clarity for the system. I know the board is thinking about some potential policy considerations in terms of grading. And so I'm excited about the work. I know our families will be appreciative of having some additional consistency in terms of what we're providing as a district and some of the information that our schools will have. And so that's just an initial thinking around this work. Some reading, professional reading I'll do this summer to make sure that I'm informed about what this book, some of the tenets And I actually don't have an opinion about the book yet because I haven't read it. And so excited to do that work and excited to move forward with this next year.
Thank you. Director Stewart.
Now it works. Superintendent Holman, we've discussed though before that grading systems are at a local level. They're at the teacher level. Teachers decide how they grade and what criteria they'll use. It's not something that's passed down from the superintendent down to the schools. It's where the rubber meets the road. So that my concern is that there's people that are under the impression that this was a system that was implemented district-wide by the district to appease or to answer issues beyond just the student's performance.
Yeah, it's interesting. Our school district used to be solely a site-based school district, meaning really all decisions around curriculum, instruction, report cards, grading, all were decided really at the school level. And so there's still some of those tentacles that are present here in our school district. Our teacher contract points to professional responsibility around grading. Presently, a teacher syllabus really is the definition around grading. I know many teachers will work with their teammates, and so we as a district, while we have policy, it really is at a very broad level policy. We started hearing last year from our administrators some questions around grading. We heard from our community questions around grading, and that's why we added that to the work plan next year, because we truly feel that the internal organization and external families are asking for clarity.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that update as to where that is and your thinking in regards to that. So our next item is Public and Community Affairs. Mark, do you have anything to report? It's been a
Just a
week.
little bit. There have been a number of public events that I've been participating in with some one-on-one discussions with our legislators around our legislative platforms to make sure they don't forget over the summer where our priorities are. And hopefully, there's a few legislators that are looking at what they could do in the time that they're preparing for legislation, as opposed to the last minute in December, what they could actually put together that would reflect our concerns. So we're working on that over the summer.
Question, and I probably should know the answer at this point, but I'm going to say it aloud anyway. The WASDA Legislative Conference, that is in September typically, is that right? Do I have that right?
It's September 30, October 1st, last
September-
weekend of September.
Late September. So I'm now going to continue thinking aloud. If for the board to be, for the legislative rep to be prepared for that, the board should have something on its work plan. For
August, September.
August, September.
And then September, October, we'll do the finalization of
Great.
priorities.
And I assume that it's already in play.
We are setting up that work plan. I was going to have a conversation with Mark to sort of set those schedules in so that it fits.
Beautiful. Thank you both.
Any other update? Okay, not hearing any. Okay. The next item is an update of where we're at with our equity work in different pieces. I think you just heard a comment about grading policy and sort of where that's going and how that fits with some of the equity work as well. At our study session tonight, we actually just finalized through the OE14 indicators on OE14, anti-racism, anti-discrimination, equity and inclusion in education. That will be coming to the board for first reading in August. And the ideal will be that we will be having the initial monitoring report sometime in end of September, October, most likely in early fall. So looking forward to that. I don't think I have anything else to add on equity. Anybody else? Okay, any board member comments? Director Stewart.
I think all of us can identify with the fact that in the last week to 2 weeks, we've all received our new real estate assessments. And a lot of folks are concerned that this assessment is going to change the the dollars pulled in by the levies. And it's just, I just want to have a reminder for folks that when we have a levy, we ask for a set dollar. It doesn't float with the assessments. It doesn't go down when the assessments go down. It doesn't go up when the assessments go up. So your new assessments are not going to be reflected in additional dollars through to the levies. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that. It's just a little reminder. To be quite frank, normally we don't even remind folks until it gets to be levy season. And I think it's this time of the year is a better time to remind folks, especially after they've just witnessed a major increase in their assessments.
Any other comments? All right, well, hearing none. With that, just so you're aware, our next board meeting will not be until August 8th. Our study session will be at 5 p.m. Our board meeting will be at 7. And the next one after that will be August 22nd. In the meantime, please feel free to peruse the budget, and if you have any questions, you can feel free to send those in. So with that, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the June 27th, 2022 board meeting.
Second.
Been moved by Director Stewart and seconded by Director La Liberty to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carried. Meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much.